Okay, so this is Max Johnson, a bass player, and you are centered in New York City. And yeah, so how old were you when you started playing music?
I started playing music in the 6th grade, but it didn't not really. I was playing clarinet in the 6th grade and switched to tuba for the 7th and 8th grade. And in the 8th grade, I don't have a good story about why I wanted to start playing. I know a lot of people have like a story where they were like, I saw a performance of such and such on TV, or I saw, Wynton Marsalis was on Sesame Street, and I know I wanted to play the trumpet. I'm like, I don't remember, but I was just hanging out with friends and they played music, and I think I was just like, well, I should play something, and I think I didn't know anyone that played the bass.
Okay.
So I asked my parents for an electric bass, and they got me an electric bass. My dad's a drummer, and so any kind of like, hey, I want to play music is going to be met with like, excellent.
Yeah.
That's good to, we're going to support that. Yeah.
So you started off on the bass?
I started off on the electric bass when I was 13.
What kind of music did you start off playing? Or did you start off with like a type of...
Yeah, I was playing like, mostly like classic rock covers and like poorly playing funk and stuff like that. I had the band in high school was called Funkus. First it was called the Fig Leaf Brothers.
Okay.
And then it was changed to Funkus, F-U-N-K-I-S. And then they changed it to F-U-N-K-U-S, but I left the band at that point. So when they changed the spelling, I had left at that point.
Is there a reason they changed the name?
Probably just it's all bad. I don't know why.
Okay.
Maybe it's all stupid. I just don't know if there was a good reason behind it. Because again, I wasn't in the band for the name change. So maybe it was just a way to signify the fact that that bass player's gone. Let's change the spelling so he doesn't sue us. That 14-year-old.
It's a very common thing.
Yeah, 14-year-olds are very litigious.
Yeah, they are. So then how were you introduced to bluegrass?
So, when I was playing the electric bass, I started going to an after-school program that's now like all over the country, maybe other places, called the School of Rock. At that time it was like privately owned, not like a corporately owned thing, and there were like 4 of them in the country. And I was going to one in northern New Jersey. And when I was going there, I met a drummer going there named Sean Trishka, who is the son of banjo player Tony Trishka, and a great musician in his own right. Both of them, everyone's great in this story. And we went to go see Tony's band play in North Jersey a bunch. And so it was Tony and Michael Daves and Brittany Haas on fiddle, then turned to Mike Barnett on fiddle, and Skip Ward on bass.
So were you older than 14 at this point?
That was probably when I was 15 or 16, maybe 16, I think. So I was like 16 and I saw them play, and they were playing the set, and Tony would be like, here's a song by Bill Monroe, and then 7 or 8 songs later, here's another song by Bill Monroe, and then I'd go home and I'd be like, well, I should probably start with this Bill Monroe guy they keep talking about. So other than Tony's record, the Double Bluegrass Banjo Spectacular, the first bluegrass I started listening to was Monroe, and I just got like one of those greatest hits collections of Monroe recordings and started listening to that, and then got really into bluegrass. But I was still playing electric bass at the time. Wasn't playing bluegrass, but just listening.
When did you switch to stand-up bass?
I wanted to, this is one of those like weird like regret moments. When I got to high school, I was already playing electric bass for 1 year, so super hot shot. I wanted to play the upright bass in the high school orchestra, and they didn't have an extra one. And they were like, well, we don't have an extra bass for you, so sorry. And I always wish that like they had an extra bass and I could have had extra time, because it wasn't until I got freshman year of college that I switched to upright bass. So I went to the New School for Jazz, and I got in on electric bass, and I'm going to school, listening to jazz, playing jazz, and realizing, wow, I'm playing the wrong instrument for this music. All the records I'm listening to have upright bass playing on them.
Yeah.
The style of music is built around the sound of this instrument. That's the sound I'm hearing in my head. I really should just switch. And so in my first year of college, I switched over. And while I still played the electric bass, that was when I kind of just made the decision, like, this instrument is going to be the one that I focus on. And during that first year of college, it's also the first time I played bluegrass. So that was the first time I got into playing upright bass in a jazz context. And by the end of my freshman year of college, was like playing some gigs around town, playing jazz. And I can remember the date actually, April of 2009 was when I played my first bluegrass gig with Ellery Marshall.
Just on here.
Where we met via Craigslist. I wanted to play bluegrass and didn't know where any jams were and didn't know anyone in the scene. So I posted an ad on Craigslist saying, like, bluegrass bass player looking to play, you know, in the way that I don't think people use Craigslist nearly as much as they did.
I don't really
then.
know what it is, but
It's like a website for, you could sell things, you can, there's like a sad missed connections thing on there, like, I saw you on the train, we locked eyes, it was a moment. And then there's also like work and jobs, and I know a lot of people, I actually have gotten a fair amount of work through there every now and then, just checking in and being like, oh, somebody needs a bass player for an occasion or something. So yeah, I met Ellery on that, and we played at a firehouse that was converted into an art gallery in Greenpoint, and that was my first bluegrass gig. And then, like, after meeting him, I started going to jams around the city and stuff like that.
So were you 21 yet, or were you?
I was 18. That was April of 2009, and and my birthday's in June.
So what jams did you go to?
The first, before I went to actually any jams, I went to Gray Fox. I think it was actually Jordan Shapiro, who I'd played with on electric bass in like a prog rock band where he was playing keyboards. He was like, well, if you like bluegrass, you should come to Gray Fox.
Yeah.
So I came to Gray Fox, which is also where I met this person right here.
That is true.
Who was about this big, which is a thing people say, and everyone gets embarrassed at. But and so that was kind of the first. That's where I met like so many people in the New York scene at that time, and you know, jamming until 3 and 4 in the morning.
Yeah.
And after that, you know, people would call you like, hey, can you do this? Or they would tell you, hey, why don't you ever go to the Sheriff Jam? Or why don't you go to this jam? And so I went to go to the Grizzly Pear, to the Bluegrass Jam, which is where Sheriff's Jam was, I guess, 6 jams ago.
Okay. 6
locations in New York ago, I think, from where it is currently.
It's back where it originally was.
Yes. The Grizzly Pear was the place after that, and then it's been a bunch since. And so I went there, and they used to have an old-time jam in the front that Carrie Groff led.
Yeah.
And I came in and heard them playing, was like, great, here's the jam. And so I started playing at the old-time jam and made friends with Carrie and started playing the old-time jam every week, and then eventually got hired to play the old-time jam every week. And I didn't even realize for a couple months that there was a bluegrass jam going on in the back. But I was enjoying the old-time jam, and it was really, and Carrie's just a super welcoming person, and so it was really nice, and I got to play there every week. And then at the same time, Melody Allegra had a jam at Banjo Jim's, and would hire me to play bass on that, so I was doing that once a month. And there were also a bunch of gigs going on at Banjo Jim's at the time. That was like a place where a lot of bluegrass people would play. And then other jams. The Sheriff one was weekly at that point. Melodies was monthly. I don't remember any other jams I would go to early on that were going on, like when I was just starting.
So what would you say draws you to bluegrass now?
It's one of those things that I have a hard time putting into words. I think about this a lot, actually, because I know so many musicians that are so snobby might be the worst, might be too negative a word, but like really kind of wrapped up in themselves and like, I play bluegrass. Bluegrass is the best music. Yeah. It's better than, like people who are into, anyone who's really into one thing and they think their one thing is better than everybody else's things, it's really hard to describe in any sort of objective terms why it is better. And because of that, like it's always hard for me to describe why I like things, just in a general sense. There's something about, I guess, the energy of the music that when it first excited me, that still exists to this day. And now I find appreciation in the really tiny minutia of the music, having been playing it for now over 10 years, of like the little tiny things about the time feel, about the way the instruments interact with each other, the little give and take between all the different instruments, how everyone's improvising and no one's improvising, and how, you know, the roles switch depending on what instrument is doing what. That stuff is, I mean, it's not exciting if you were just playing at a festival. No one's gonna, like, the audience is gonna be like, wow, the fiddle is now playing long tones here, while before they were chopping when the mandolin was soloing, and like that's, but I like that, and I've recently gone back to the original Monroe recordings a lot, and it's really interesting to listen to, especially chronologically going forward from like the beginning, how they didn't know what bluegrass was then. Yeah. So they're figuring it out too. Like the guitar rhythm on one song will be totally different than the guitar rhythm on the next song. They don't really know what it's supposed to play. What the bass is doing is it's walking on one tune, it's playing 1, 3, and 4 on one tune, it's playing a syncopated rhythm on one. And then kind of in the 50s it kind of turned into this thing that is fairly recognized as bluegrass now, and then, you know, since it's been going through these things. And I think what's really nice about this time right now that we're in is that bluegrass has gotten to this place where it is such a blanket term that to most people bluegrass does not mean, you know, Jim and Jesse. It doesn't mean the Osborne Brothers. It means like, it could mean a singer-songwriter. It could mean a band with electric bass and drums and keyboards. And while like ostensibly none of that is bluegrass, none of that is that initial thing that kind of dropped from the sky onto Bill Monroe's head. Yeah. It's all incorporating other things from other musics, and I think it's healthy for any style of music or any history of music to reach out outside of its, you know, tiny little world and start grabbing things. And some of it will be successful, some of it will be like the corniest thing you've ever heard, but like it's important, I think, to just do that. And so that's barely answers the question, but it certainly answers some question. Yeah. But yeah.
So you said you came to New York City for school.
Well, I was born in New York originally, actually. Oh. So I was born in New York and was like a tiny little baby, tinier than the first time I met you, on East 18th Street around 3rd Avenue. And then when I was 2, my family moved to Hoboken, and I lived in Hoboken for pretty much most of my adolescence until like some part in middle school, and then we moved to Montclair, New Jersey, and then I moved back here after high school. So I've never lived like more than an hour from where I'm currently sitting. So my perspective is very small. But yeah, I always knew, I only applied to colleges in New York because I was like, this is the place, I want to play music, I want to play. At that time, at the end of high school, going to college, I was into jazz, I was listening to bluegrass, not playing yet, and into rock music, and I was like, there's so many things happening in New York. Why not stay here while, you know, where I can get the, you know, top quality of all the different stuff.
You just answered my question. Okay, so you've been playing bluegrass for around 10 years? Mm-hmm. How have you seen the New York City scene evolve since you've been here?
That's something that I could speak on, is that I think the New York City scene, when I started playing, was a lot more conservative musically. Mm-hmm. There was a lot more, not actual traditionalists, because no one, it wasn't really like anyone is like playing it really like traditional, like 50s style bluegrass. it's more that people were very interested in just playing tunes from, you know, the canon and not really influencing anything else. No one was, not no one, but most people weren't even playing like Bela or anything like more modern.
Yeah, like Newgrass.
Yeah, and being someone that played jazz and bluegrass, I just remember when I would tell people that I had a jazz gig, they would inevitably be like, "You play jazz?" And that was the inflection almost every time. And it was not a very, honestly, not a very welcoming thing, and you would just end up starting to not tell people.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't that. And at the same time, it's very funny because most of the scene was very like, you know, musically conservative and very like bluegrass, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And but at the same time, that's when the Punch Brothers were in New York, and they were the opposite of like totally blowing up what the word bluegrass meant and doing Pete Bingo at the Living Room and like experimenting and kind of building their music, and that was really interesting. But when I started playing, none of them were like really like hanging out at the jams or anything like that. Like I would get to play with Critter every now and then, but it wasn't like a, you know, it wasn't like Thiele's like gonna come to the Grizzly Pear from Sheriff's Jam and hang out, which apparently was happening just before I started doing it. And
I heard this one story about him and Mark O'Connor and Greg Guerin and Michael Davis all being there.
I remember Mark O'Connor showed up a good handful of times. He would show up with like students of his, and like they'd play, and he would sometimes not even play, and he would just hang out and kind of be an imposing figure.
That must have been fun.
It was cool. I mean, you know, when you're like, you know, 20 and Mark O'Connor shows up, and you're like, oh my god, it's the guy from literally every record from the late 80s through the 90s. And then, you know, it was him. And, so it was interesting. But I think maybe about 5 years ago, the scene started to change in a very positive way. And I think that's a lot of musicians started moving to town from other places, either moving to town from like the West Coast, moving to town from Nashville, a lot of people moving from college in Boston, like people going to NEC or Berkeley, and in a combination like young people that are like extremely high level on their instruments, but who are also musically omnivorous, who really want to check out a lot of different things, like, you know, Jolliffe or Hargraves, and people like, there's so many. I mean, when Jordan Tice moved to town, I remember it being a big thing. When Grant Gordy moved here, like these are people that like, oh my goodness, they are amazing musicians in this bluegrass world, and also much heavier than just that. And I think the kind of sheer level of play that people like that brought to the scene was really refreshing, because it was a totally different style of playing than the New York scene had at that point. It really opened a lot of people who may have been a little more narrowly focused's mind to like, man, maybe other musics are cool to incorporate into your playing. Like maybe the way Grant brings jazz into his bluegrass guitar playing is really hip, and I should maybe start listening to more things. And I think, and I would start seeing people who, you know, 3 or 4 years earlier were like, you played jazz, we're like, hey, did you hear that record? Like, and you're like, oh, okay, maybe, and it's, you know, you could sit there and be like, well, I was there, but, you know, it's positive. It's all positive change. And then, you know, when people come to town who are excited and want to bring new music into the music, not just like outside musics, but just do their own thing with the music, I think it's only positive for the scene, because it just makes everybody want to play better and play more original music.
You talked about this a little bit, but you mentioned that a lot of younger folks were coming and starting to play. Traditionally, bluegrass is typically like a lot of older folks are playing it. I know, like, when I was younger, like, it was all my dad and his friends, and there weren't really anyone in like their 20s and 30s at the time. Why do you think so many younger people are playing it now?
Well, I don't know if it is traditionally older people playing it. I think depending where you're from, that might be more the life experience. A lot more of my friends from more rural areas than New York, because definitely grow up playing, and like friends of mine in North Carolina, South Carolina, out in Colorado, when there's all these, I mean, Colorado's got so many festivals, and people are bringing their kids every year, and there's, 15 bluegrass festivals every summer. And if people are going all the time, kids are seeing it being played on stage at the highest level, people having fun at the campsite, and I think you start to get curious about it sooner. I think in New York in general, I think there's a lot of issues with people because there's time is such a crunch, because sense of community isn't the same as it is in a more rural area. People are a lot more like stuck to their neighborhoods and things like that. That it doesn't have that same kind of... Also, it's much more expensive, so it's harder to like just be like, hey, let's buzz off for the week and go hang at this festival all week. It's like,
it's a lot
man,
of money.
how am I going to pay my rent? So I think that... I don't know if that is necessarily more young people doing it. I think, though, because of... I don't know, in general, in any music, I think the more... more the history of the music goes on, because I mean bluegrass music at this point is only about 70 years old. It's like 75, like the longer music goes on, the more it can be entrenched in multiple generations, but also the more there's just like scary good players who are 10, who are 8, like there's bands of like children who are crushing, and it's really great that there's just so many people who are that voracious at such a young age. But I don't know, I think any music, I mean, you see it in the jazz world. I mean, looking at someone like Joey Alexander, who's that like child piano phenomenon, like he's like a genuine famous person because he's a child who is just crushing on piano. So like it's weird. It's like what part of it is, I think it's just great that at least anyone can get into it at any time. I think, I don't know, there's all my friends from different parts of the world have different experiences. Like I didn't really like hear or go see bluegrass until I was a teenager, but like Mike Robinson and Don Leslie have been seeing and playing bluegrass since like before they could talk. So it's everyone's got a different experience.
That's true. So probably one of the biggest parts of bluegrass is the festivals. And you play a lot of festivals.
Yes, I have.
So, do you think that regionally they have a different effect on how that scene is going to progress? Like,
I think so. Yeah, I think regionally the bluegrass scenes in the country. I can't speak on the rest of the world as much. I only know that a couple bluegrass scenes outside the country, like Barcelona and Paris, where there are like smaller scenes. Paris is actually a cool scene. I think regionally there are different kind of flavors that naturally occur just based on what bands come out of there, what like the big bands are like, that certain areas have reputations for being a certain way. And I think the festivals and who books festivals, who brings what bands in, can do a big service to that region, you know what I mean? For an area that might be more like singer-songwritery, or I don't know how to describe it. If they were just like, if all of a sudden the festivals were bringing in more like, really hard-hitting southern bluegrass bands, it would probably do something to the scene. In the same way that if it happened vice versa, or if in a really very conservative like southern bluegrass festival you started bringing in more like jam bands or things that were, I think it would influence the community and the people going to it, because honestly, the nice thing with the internet is that we can hear anything at any time. You just pick up your telephone and all of a sudden it's playing a song that came out 2 minutes ago. But seeing something in person and being there and experiencing it is always going to be a much more meaningful experience. And seeing something in person, I mean, I remember seeing Tony's band for the first time. Like, I remember when I saw Dell's band for the first time. These are like moments that I'm like, wow, what? This is a thing. Like, and like, and so I think that that's, but yeah, the festival things it's interesting. New York's a weird one because Gray Fox is kind of our de facto festival.
Yeah.
And it's a really nice festival. Like as far as it was my first festival, having gone to a bunch of festivals, I'm like, that was a great festival. Like I really like hanging out. I mean, I wish it wasn't as muddy, but
I think
other
that
than
depends
that,
on the year.
of course. But man, it can really the grounds. If it rains, you're just
2
totally
years
like.
ago, it got so muddy that they were talking about keeping it going for another 2 days because none of the cars could get out.
I played that year, and I had the
that's
idea of wearing like a white linen pants that were, I think, upon walking from our car to the stage, my girlfriend looked at me and said, you need to change your pants right now.
Yeah.
Like, you need this.
They're not white anymore.
You look like an idiot. And I'm like, yeah, you were right. But yeah, I think that because New York kind of has this, it doesn't have like a festival scene though. Other than that festival, I mean, there are plenty of other festivals you can go to, but it's not like everyone's going out to like, there's so many great festivals in North Carolina. There's so many great festivals in Colorado. In Northern California, there's a bunch of great festivals. Like it's places where you can grow up going to these festivals. In New York, it's a different thing. I mean, it's just that city living thing, but.
Yeah.
I mean, in the Midwest, there's a lot now, too. I've noticed, like, Indiana has a weirdly high amount of festivals, and you're like,
really?
Indiana, who would have thunk?
Virginia has a lot of festivals.
Oh, yeah, Virginia's another great state for festivals. And long ones, too. Virginia really likes the full week festival, week. Not like a weekend.
Yeah, like Clifftop and Helix, really. And like, I've heard that they open, like, a couple days or a week ahead.
Yeah. So people could just go hang out.
Yeah.
Like, that's a community thing, and it's funny, like, it's hard to keep that sort of thing going, but it's really important, I think, for young musicians is like going there and just sitting in that and just being like, and to turn the tables on you for a second, for instance, like you went to Gray Fox, you said this is your 15th year, this coming one, and so how long did it take you to actually want to play an instrument, though?
Not that long. I guess I was about 9 or so.
But still, I mean, for instance, for someone having to go there, having been, since you were not even an age, like, sometimes it takes a while for people to actually, to be like, I can do this. Or, like, to get some sort of confidence of like, wow, I'm in this. This is fun. I want to do this. And some people will not ever do that, and that's fine. But like, I think encouraging that sort of thing through community is important.
I think that probably around the time that you met me, I think Carrie started teaching me a little bit of fiddle, but it didn't take off. But I remember that. But the reason I wanted to start playing was actually because I had to go to bed at like 8 o'clock because my mom didn't go out and do anything, and my dad got to stay up late. So I figured out,
it's like
I said, like, what do I have to do to stay up late? That's actually
great. I mean, everyone's got weird different things, but I like the idea of like, well, I don't want to go to bed early. I should start playing an instrument. Yeah. Not even like,
my dad's like, if you can play an instrument, you can stay up late.
Yeah, that's a great math. I like that.
Yeah, I started staying up late. I was very, very proud of because my mom and dad would like split off at Gray Fox, and he'd be like, okay, you take Emma and Kate, and I'm gonna go.
Yeah.
And I was very proud, and he's like, all right, I'll take Emma and you take Kate, and we're gonna go. And I'm like, all right, it's 9 o'clock, and I'm not going to bed.
Yeah, there you go.
It's a really proud moment.
The first year where you're like, I'm staying up till 4 a.m.
I fell asleep.
Okay. you're like, I still fell asleep before midnight, but it was pretty cool. Yeah.
I was cool for a few hours.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, but it's that thing of growing up in it, and it's not like you're going to festivals all the time, but going to this thing every year, it makes you...
Yeah.
I think this, in general, and this is definitely a sidebar of some kind, but like, come on. When you are exposed to something a lot, it doesn't matter what it is, you can grow to appreciate some things about it.
Yeah.
Unless, Oh, or you can grow to hate it. Like too much of something also can be bad.
Yeah.
So, but you know it, and you know if you like it, you know if you don't like it. You grow to like have at least some understanding of it. And yeah, I see what you're doing, Gabby. But I think that's a really important thing for people, and I think for any kind of music, for any kind of artwork, seeing something once, you don't understand it, and like I think, making people see things a lot or check things out deeply and listen to something a lot before they make some sort of judgment call on it is very important. And I think it's a great example of like, if you bring someone to something, they're either going to be like, man, I love bluegrass, I want to be this, or they're going to be like, man, not really a big fan, or they'll be like, yeah, I'm cool with this, just but they'll know if they're on either side of it. Exactly.
Or in between. Hey, here's a question that I'm sorry about, but if you could describe bluegrass in like one word or phrase, what would it be?
Word or phrase?
Yeah, it could be either one. It could be both, too.
Knowing me, it's probably a long phrase. Boy, that's actually a difficult question.
I'm sorry.
I don't know, there's something about the fact that it's, at least traditional bluegrass, is all acoustic instruments, which is something that makes it, in many ways, unique and actually interesting to me. I've realized that at least over the last few years that I prefer music played by acoustic instruments.
Yeah.
Pretty much more than anything. I realized I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to these classical music concerts, I'm going to jazz concerts, I'm going to bluegrass. Oh, there's acoustic instruments playing all of this music, and rarely is something else added, and if something else is added, it takes a heck of a musician to, make me go, okay, well, that makes sense. But, I mean, there's of course other things I enjoy, but I realize there's a draw with acoustic music to my ear, probably because I play an acoustic instrument, I really hearing the overtones in those instruments. But it's nice to hear things in a venue where you can actually hear what the instruments sound like versus plugged into things. And there's not a lot of quiet rooms in the city that have music. And so I think that leads to, the strengths of bluegrass is hearing kind of these instruments with microphones and hearing what the actual sound of the instrument is. And there's not a lot of places where you can do it. So I think the kind of uniqueness and aural power of the music is lost on people listening to it.
Yeah. Okay. So, you talked a lot about jazz.
Mm-hmm.
You play free jazz.
That's true.
How did you get into that?
So, at the end of high school, when I was kind of not getting disillusioned, but wanting to kind of expand my horizons away from the this rock and blues world that I was listening to as a child, I was my dad was saying, hey, check these records out, check this record out, and I remember the first getting to fusion bands like the Headhunters or Return to Forever, and then finally hearing Charles Mingus's record, Mingus was the first jazz record where, much like hearing bluegrass for the first time, it was what is this?
Yeah.
I want to know more about whatever this is. And so I got much more interested into Charles Mingus at the time. And that's also the first time I think I heard an upright bass player where I was like, who the hell is that? And how can he do those things? Which is still a question I have. And so I really got into to jazz music through that. And it was kind of listening to kind of the evolution of the music from the late 50s into the 60s, when Coltrane started incorporating free improvisation into his music, and Ornette Coleman's early music into his second period band, and that stuff just really started exciting me. And I'm excited by music that doesn't sound like anything I've ever heard before.
Yeah.
And it's the more music I listen to and the more music I learn about, it's actually harder and harder of a thing to find. Is to actually hear sounds you've never heard before. It's like a weird search. I feel like I'm like a treasure hunter. And it's really exciting every time there's something. I've just been recently listening to this composer, Helmut Lachenmann, who's a German composer, and it's like eating like an exquisite meal. Like every sound is like a new, like, I'm so excited by it. It's such a great feeling to be in. So I mean, free improvised music is one of those things that I was just so confused in an amazed way by, that I really decided when I picked up the upright bass that like the musics I was listening to at the time were mostly like freely improvised music and bluegrass. And I was like, I'm going to dedicate myself to playing these musics that I'm so interested in. And I was lucky enough to study with one of the great bass players of the 60s jazz era, who was one of the, like, you know, forefathers of free jazz bass playing, which is Henry Grimes, and Reggie Workman. And it was really able to, you know, open my eyes to like a whole new realm of music. And there's something really beautiful about improvisation when there isn't any sort of kind of rules or requirements placed on it, and like anything can happen, and because you're entering into kind of an agreement with everyone you're playing with. If you're playing with people, if you're playing solo, it's a whole other set of issues, of course. But if you're playing with people, you're kind of entering this agreement that we're all sharing this thing together, and we will all be present. We'll all be listening to each other, and it's usually and you're also all agreeing to, if this may fail. Like, we are going to try something, and it might not work tonight at all. And if you're playing a song, you could play a song pretty consistently night after night. Like, I've played in bands where the song is, I mean, within 98% the same as it was the night before. But there's something beautiful about, you're just like, none of this has ever been done before, and none of it ever will be done again. And it's a really thrilling experience, and I think the more you work on it, and the more you study it, and the more you listen to it, it is even more serious and, I want to say spiritual, but not in like a religious way, like in a way that you have to give your whole self up to the music that's being made, or else it's just gonna, or else you're just pressing your fingers down and seeing what happens. You know, I think there's something really special about that really only exists in improvised music, where you're stepping onto a stage to create something that has never been created before and never will be created since. I think there's something that can be very profound about it, and a lot of times it does not work. And sometimes it is the most it's more amazing than anything someone could have written down if they tried, you know.
I saw you play last night, and it was really cool.
Well, thank you.
So, just like last night, you played with a lot of different groups. How do those, like, get started? And, like,
I have a very musically omnivorous tendencies. And so when I have an idea for a project, I like to do it. And sometimes it's just a super general idea, like, I have this one tune, who are the people that I want to play this, and then that can turn off into like a band. Or it's like a full concept, and I need to really find the right people that'll like do this thing. But I mean, having played in the city for over 10 years, I've gotten to meet a lot of really great people, and musicians of all different kinds of styles, and like, that's also super inspiring too, is that sometimes I'll just hear somebody play, and that will inspire a whole project. I have a record called In the West that is it's all like very long, patient music for piano trio plus pedal steel, and that band started as a piano trio, and I was always thinking, like, I want to add something something atmospheric. I was thinking actually like electronics. And I was like, well, either I'm going to add electronics or I'm going to add this one person who I know plays clarinet who just plays no notes and just all sounds. Or then I remembered like 5 years earlier, I had heard this pedal steel player, Susan Alcorn, who's an amazing improvising pedal steel player. And I was like, oh no, that's the person. And so you just think, oh, because of this one time I heard this person 5 years ago, that spark of like, oh, this, and then that like sparked on the end of the recording and of the project and stuff like that. So you never know. I mean, there's so many great musicians, and they really inspire you to do things a lot of the time. I compose a lot of music, and sometimes hearing somebody play is just like, oh, I got to write something for that person, because what they can't, I can give them anything and they can do it. I was going to say they can't not do anything, but that's not very clear. But yeah, they can do anything. So or their sound is just so huge and welcoming, or it's warm, or that person, or just meeting somebody sometimes and just talking with them without hearing them play a note and just getting a feeling that this is someone that would be great to work with, and then you hear them and you're like, oh wow, they're amazing. And there's certain people that it's just the people we're surrounded by in the city are really inspiring.
Yeah. So how did you start composing music?
I started writing music. I started writing like songs when I was a teenager and playing in rock bands and stuff. And I had a Pro Tools set up where I would like multi-track myself and like play electric bass and some guitar, and I'd get my dad to play drums. And that stuff is very rough. I don't think I even have it anymore, and I hope that no one ever finds it. And then I had a band in high school, and we would kind of like write together, but I wasn't really writing for that. That was like the other people writing. And when I got to school and started playing in like more jazz bands, I was just start writing tunes for them, because I was like, that's what you do. If you lead a band, it's actually very funny. Bluegrass is a music that there's not a lot of styles of music where you can be a professional band that's actually famous and touring, playing all cover songs.
Yeah.
But bluegrass bands, there's a lot of bands, and now, especially there's a lot more writing involved, because there's a lot more influence from like the singer-songwriter world and the Americana world. But like, the Del McCoury band, they're not writing those songs.
Yeah.
There's like, they'll play maybe one song one of them wrote a set. And it's amazing when you think about it, like, wow, these are just all someone else's stuff. But
but then they get known for, like, Del McCoury is known for doing Vincent Blacklight.
Of course, yeah.
When it's not his.
Yeah, and they would never claim it is, which is nice, because some people do kind of like
Bill Monroe.
Yeah, well, that's the big famous version. But that's it's interesting. But and in jazz, like, nobody really is a huge famous person who does not at least have their own music. A lot of people play other people's music, but usually not on the like touring famous musician level as far as what their sets are concerned. So I was just writing a lot for that. And while I was in my undergrad, I got really interested in listening to a lot of 20th century classical music, most inspired by hearing Arnold Schoenberg's music for the first time, and just, again, having that, like, what is in a cartoon when someone gets hit with a hammer and they're like, there's stars all over their head. It's like, it was, without the hammer part, that was like me listening to Schoenberg for the first time. I'm just like, oh my God, what is this? There's so much, I do so much I don't know. Yeah, Schoenberg was the hammer. Oh, that's a great sentence. I bet he would love that if he were still with us. If he hadn't died, it's like 80 years ago. No, 70 years ago. But,
wow.
But so I got really into that and started studying privately while I was in my undergrad, composition, taking some lessons with Kirk and Narok, and then I went to grad school for composition, and I got my master's in composition at the Vermont College of Fine Arts, and that's where I was. And I got there. It's actually very funny. I applied to I kind of did what I did at the New School, where I applied the New School on electric bass, and then I ended up studying upright bass and graduating on upright bass. And in Vermont, I applied with a bunch of like jazz compositions. Got there immediately, only wrote chamber music and only focused on writing like new music and contemporary chamber music. And so that way, and then I graduated there 3 years ago and have been kind of pursuing that world since. And I've been writing a lot of different music for different ensembles and working on a crazy piece right now. And it's really it's a really wonderful
You're working
thing.
On a chamber piece?
For oboe, cello, trombone, and percussion. And I'm very, very excited about it. It's going to take a lot of work that I am very excited to put in. But it's really because it's for every piece of music is kind of like you're setting up, you're creating all of these problems for yourself, and you slowly start solving them. And it's like, it's a very emotionally testing process, at least for me. I don't know if it is for everybody.
Yeah.
I'm kind of like piling all these bricks on my back, and then I start the piece and I just feel like this, and by each of them I take them off and I'm like, I'm so much lighter, and then the next piece starts and it's just like, oh.
All over again.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know, I wish I could get away with never doing the part where I put the bricks on my back. But, you know, everybody's got a different process.
Yeah. At least you become light afterwards.
Exactly. Eventually.
So going back into bluegrass, you did a duo with Jacob Jolly.
That's correct.
For a while. How did that start, and what was that like?
It started because we're both nuts.
Okay.
Both personally and musically, I would say. And we kind of have this like brotherly relationship in the way that we're just constantly at each other's throats, just needling each other and busting on each other. And musically also have a similar relationship where it's kind of always trying to outdo the other person or make the other person just like crack up with how like insane the thing is you're playing.
Yeah.
But also just a genuine like love of a lot of the same music. And so we had played like a bunch of gigs around town with like bands, and we actually ended up doing a couple just like, you know, restaurant or bar gigs duo, and had thought it for just logistical reasons, being like, oh well, there's two of us, we can make more money on this gig, sort of like. And I was like, oh no, this actually really works and it's really fun, we should probably do this. So I put my we played like a few around town and we had a lot of fun doing that, and so I put my booking cap on, and we did 2 tours over the last couple years doing it. And I just talked to him yesterday about hopefully doing some more stuff, but like his schedule is maybe the most terrifying of anyone I know personally. It's like between Yonder and his own band, he's never even here. He lives around the corner from me.
Yeah.
And I did just see him the last 2 days, so that is, we're really winning right now. But it was like 2 months before that, so yeah, it's pretty crazy. So maybe we'll do some. Well, I'm hoping to do more stuff, but you know.
You used to play Barbez.
I do. I play there every month.
I know. I saw you last
Barbez, Brooklyn. Hey, come on! Every month I'm doing something.
It's pretty fun. Yesterday it was pretty cool. Played a very long song yesterday.
Yeah, there were like 2 20-ish minute things.
Yeah.
That was the set. It was a lot of fun. That was, for everyone listening at home, that was my band, which it's a trio with Anna Weber and Michael Serene, and we'll be touring Europe next year, so tell your friends.
Hey, that's pretty cool. Where in Europe?
We'll be playing in Germany, Belgium, Austria, and Italy as of now, and I'm still working on some more.
That's pretty cool. I've never been to any of those places. Probably because I've never left the country. But
All good as far as places to go. I would recommend all of them.
Okay. I'll talk to my parents.
Yeah, be like, hey parents, Max said I should go to Belgium, Austria, Germany, and Italy. Not specifically in February and March of 2020, but
yeah, well,
if anyone out there is in those countries, then maxjohnsonmusic.com. We got the plug section a little late in the interview, but
exactly.
there we go.
It's good. It's still
good.
in there.
Of course.
Okay. So you also played with Molly Tuttle.
Mm-hmm.
How did that start?
Well, we were we met at an IBMA a couple years ago, and just were palling around and having a good time, and kind of became friends pretty quickly, just hanging out, because IBMA is a really great place for just meeting everybody in the scene, but also just like everyone's around all day. It's kind of like it's a festival without the cool campground. It's like if you just stuck a festival in the middle of the city. But I really do love it. And so we were playing there, and I was touring with the Jeff Austin band at the time. And had been doing that for a while, and I was a big fan of Molly's and really loved her playing, and saw her play, and she was like, hey, I'm trying to start like a new lineup of the band, would you be interested in playing it? I was like, yeah. And so like months went by, and then eventually it happened, and we toured the better part of last year and some of this year, and then she started another lineup of the band to tour the new record. But it was a lot of fun, and we got to play like a ton of festivals, and
you got to play the Grand Ole Opry.
Yes, that's true. We got to do it twice. It was really cool.
Yeah.
It's very funny, and it's such like a big dream for so many people, and I was like, losing my mind about it for sure. And it's funny when you show up to the Grand Ole Opry, because everyone that works there, it's just their job.
Yeah.
And so there's no stress whatever coming from anyone working there. It's only from people who are doing it for the first time.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God! And then the crew's there is like tossing microphones around. You're like, oh yeah, you guys are just here like 4 times a week. It's very funny. But it was a really really great experience to do that. And then we did the Opry again later that year, actually at the Ryman Auditorium, which is the original home of the Opry, and that was in many ways even more special to get to like do it in the home of the Grand Ole Opry. And it was really great.
That's pretty cool. So now you play with Nefesh.
Oh, talk about it?
Yeah.
I started playing with them earlier this year, and we've done a lot of stuff so far. We've played a bunch over the country. We played in Israel, which was my first time ever going to Israel, which was great. I've been making hummus like every week since I've gotten back, really trying to perfect the Israeli style of hummus.
How's it going?
It's going great. I would say I am better than most hummus I've had in New York, so take that. I'm getting there.
Okay.
And it's been really cool. We have a bunch of stuff. We've been like off for the last couple weeks, but we just did a cool gig at the Station Inn in Nashville, and we have a bunch of gigs in Colorado, Georgia, Oregon, more in Colorado, a couple in like Connecticut and Boston this summer. So it's like there's a lot of stuff coming up, and it should be cool. We're going to do a record next year.
That's pretty cool. Well, thank you so much for talking to me today.
Of course. Thank you for having me.